Welcome to 8 Wonders International Women's Day series in association with Kent FA and My Club Pro. We're currently interviewing 8 incredible women involved in football.
And now we're really fortunate to be joined by Denise Richmond, who has so many roles across the game. Let's find out a little bit more about them now.
Thanks for joining us, Denise, on International Women's Day. So our first question for you is a difficult one because you have multiple of them. But what is your current role in football at the moment?
I suppose so. First and foremost, I'm a volunteer. But then have been fortunate enough to be elected chair of the Southern Counties East Football League. I'm also elected chair of the Kent County Football Association. I will add in that I'm the first lady chair of the Kent County Football Association. I'm also step 5, 6 leagues representative on the FA Council and an FA club consultant. I think the current roles that I'm in, I'm able to influence and impact football. So with the club consultant, you can influence clubs into better structures, better strategies, ways to move forward. With the league, the chair of the league and chair of the county association, you can influence, you can make things happen and change things, not necessarily revolutionize it, but definitely through evolutionary processes, I think is probably the best way to describe it.
Fantastic. And over your years involved in football and in Kent football in particular, can you tell us about a lesson that football has taught you?
I think the biggest lesson is probably to think first, speak second. Definitely don't just shoot from the hip. There are many opinions, as we all know, in football. Not all of them right, but definitely not all of them wrong either. So to think first and listen to what's being said, I think is probably the most important thing.
I think that's a really good point as well in terms of being a leader in football, and with all your experience, that's a lesson that I think a lot of us can take away. What's the biggest challenge about working in football?
I think the biggest challenge, I don't know really. The biggest challenge is probably people, but they're also the biggest joy because you meet so many characters, levels of interest. And you just don't know how the way that one person will react to something and deal with something is very different from the way that somebody else will. So I think it's probably people. But as I said, they're also the biggest joy and probably the most fun.
Absolutely. And can you remember a time that somebody has given you a bit of advice that you've managed to take forward in all your roles?
I can. This wasn't football related, but it definitely helps with football. It's actually make the choice between fighting the battle and winning the war. So the argument debate you're having at this point in time may be important, but is it important? Is it going to help you win that war and influence the end result in its entirety? So definitely pick your battles and aim for the bigger picture, really.
Aim for the bigger picture. That's really, really useful. And as it's International Women's Day, we are celebrating. Who is someone you'd like to give a shout out for the support and the way they've maybe helped nurture you and your involvement in the game?
I have to say, sadly, it's probably not women. I think a woman. I think if you I've been involved in non-league football for over 30 years, and I think that the two biggest influences. One is my husband. He definitely helped me get involved when I first became secretary of Greenwich Borough and was a supporter in how to deal with players and management committees, etc. And secondly would be Roy Vinter, who was former league secretary of what was the Kent League and is now Southern Counties East Football League. But very much he was a mentor in dealing with the wider football family. Douglas was really influential in dealing with closer network of friends and colleagues, but Roy was definitely more supportive and influential and mentoring really from that bigger picture and wider football contacts.
I think you're absolutely right in terms of there's probably so many male role models out there for women who are involved in football. What's really lovely to see as we're sitting here now in 2021 is you are the first female chair of a county FA, and so you are going to be the inspiration for our eighth wonder candidates coming through now, which means that hopefully in a few years' time when we're interviewing them, they'll be able to say that you were the one that were able to give them a bit of advice, because now we have female role models. So could you describe...
We do actually. What's interesting is I was on a Women in Football webinar earlier this week, and they were talking about mentoring. And again, a lot of the people mentioned about male mentors in the early days, but now we're trying to be those mentors for the future and help and support and grow women's involvement in football, not just from a playing and participation point of view, but from working in football and administrative and volunteering or paid employment, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's certainly something that's needed within football. Could you describe for us working in football in 3 words?
I definitely think it's exciting, it's challenging, and rewarding, I think, is probably the best 3 words I can think of.
They're 3 very good words indeed, I think, Denise. And one final question for you. What would be one tip you would give to a person looking to get more involved and looking to work in football?
I think the first thing would be is really start to look at volunteer opportunities. I think if you can start to get involved in football in a volunteer capacity or a part-time or freelance capacity, I think that's easiest the way to learn about how football works, how football runs, and then you can take that to those bigger paid roles in the future.
I think that's a really great bit of advice there. Denise, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this series. Like Nat said at the very start, you have broken glass ceilings in your role and the way you're leading the game, and we're really grateful that you've shared some of that experience and insight with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here and talk to you both.
And thank you for listening to this episode. We've got a whole series of conversations with incredible women working in football, so do keep your eyes peeled for other episodes as well.